Okay, beginning with the 2021 vintage, you released wines under your own name for the first time. How did that feel?
Happy to not be only the FIS at the end of the label, it was Bernard Moreau, FIS, so now I've got my name. And yes, I don't want to say it's a goal, but it's a normal way. I'm happy. And now when I introduce myself to a client, I just say Alex Moreau. I don't say anymore Alex Moreau from Bernard Moreau.
Okay.
Yeah. It's more clear.
Okay. Could you try to another one? It's Moreau 보조.
You haven't tried the 23 since they're in bottle, huh?
Yeah.
We tried together in tank, but not really.
Oh, I love it. Oh. Do you see the winemaker's role as that open interpreter, creator, or perhaps as Anselm Solos once described the midwife? What do you think?
I put myself more like maybe midwife could be a good yes. We are here to help the terroir in each vintage to show himself. But again, what we have said before, you can guide a little bit. Be careful. I don't want to say we guide technically. We guide with a decision in terms of vine growing and winemaking. But with all the technique today, we can cover each terroir. You can go. We can push. We can be very winemakers. My belief is leave the wine talk itself and help the wine. You need to guide, and you need to. It's like a child. He's got his own decision, but you can help. And to see, okay, you go in this direction or in this direction, and maybe not too far in this direction, not too far in this direction. You can guide and help, but not cover. For me, chassagne is important, the name of the brand is important. It's why in Burgundy, as I keep repeating to people, when you drink a bottle of Burgundy, you have as many information on it. You need the level appellation, if it's a Bourgogne, the village, a Premier Cru or a Grand Cru. If it's a Premier Cru, which one, which lieu-dit, and from who. So we are here to help these four levels to live, but you are not here to make too much shade on the terroir, I think.
If you had to define your wine in one sentence, how would you describe it? Freshness?
Freshness. Wine is made to be drunk and share.
Okay.
Sharing. It's
That's
all
good.
about sharing.
Okay, could you describe
Poruzo.
Yeah.
Okay. Also Poruzo. So we are mostly identified as a Chassagne Moreau producer. And we do a little bit of Poruzo between 1 and 2 barrels. That's it. Poruzo is one of the terroirs in Meursault can have this bit of richness sometimes. Even in 23, when you taste the wine, you can feel somewhere the direction where I want to make the wine going. Okay, it's Meursault, there is a weight of Meursault, but there is some freshness. And don't forget, this vintage 23, this is my longest aging process ever, especially for Premier Crus and Grand Crus.
Okay.
I never did aging that long. Reason, naturalist. They were a little bit lazy and they worked slowly, never stopped, but worked very, very slowly for a few barrels, nearly 1 year at least.
1 year?
Yeah, of slow fermentation, active. So it was quite cloudy and a lot of CO2, which I like because it preserves the wine naturally. And I leave it like that. There is some cuvées where I extend my wood treatment longer on lees, because for the same reason. I like to keep to do the final aging in tank on lees, and because for some cuvées I needed to do longer aging because I thought the wine was not ready to get out of barrel. For those cuvées, Gros Cru, altogether 22 months, and it could be a paradox, but from my personal view, longer the wine was aged, fresher the wine became.
For white wine, acidity is often considered essential. What fact do you focus on most when managing acidity?
Sometimes you have to make a difference between acidity and freshness. It doesn't mean you need to have high acidity to get freshness, but that's for sure. This is a very important point, especially the way where I want to go. So, yeah, again, we come back for the picking date. It's very, very important. The acidity is one important thing to make the wine able to age, but it is not a guarantee. It is not a guarantee. I've seen some faster evolution, even if there is a vintage with high acidity. It's not related to longevity, but to keep this nearly saltiness into the wine. You want another glass after the other one. You know, this is very important. This is the goal. This is the line for me to follow.
In your opinion, what is the most significant change currently taking place in the global wine market?
I told you one of my most my preferred sentence. When I say wine is made to be share,
drinking,
drink and share.
Yeah.
Maybe in some part of the wine industry, we lost this last. It means the wine at one point, I've said that it has to be consumed.
Okay.
You know, the wine business has always been like that since decades. It's always been like that. It's a product, but it has to be consumed. It has to be, because when your wine is not consumed anymore, when the market struggle, you will get it in your face right away, because retailers or sommelier will see their wine list and say, "Oh, I've got plenty of this wine. I can give up for 1, 2, 3 years." It's not a good sign. I will make a difference between holding a stock to make people able to drink wine with age, or holding stock because you cannot sell it. This is you cannot, or you don't want because you want to make money. But but this is a big difference.
How do you assess the potential of the Asian market?
Good potential, but after I will make a difference between markets in Asia. Japan is a mature market, knowledgeable markets since a long time. For other part of Asia, we're still working on, but as the world is going fast. You know, I think different markets. The wine in the past was never in the everyday consumption, and it's becoming slowly. When I first started to work with my parents, the main markets was 4 main markets: UK, US, Japan, and few countries in Europe. The other market like here, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, or China came a bit later. And I've seen already an evolution in those markets. Like there is few markets in Asia, they start to know and drink only the top wine in any regions. And now, because the market is becoming a bit more difficult, we can see people interesting with entry-level wines, which is important because don't forget, like for Burgundy, our appellation system works like a pyramid, and the bottom of the pyramid is the Bourgogne, and the volume of Bourgogne is 60%. The top of the pyramid, the Grand Cru, is less than 2%.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody speaks about this 2%, but the major pollution is the bottom. And back to what you are saying, consumption. Good Bourgogne, it makes introduction to people, because sometimes Burgundy, if you don't know anything about wine, I have to accept this and not deny, Burgundy is not the most easier wine region to start with, because there is no blending between wine grapes, but you have to know appellation systems, the 4 levels of appellation system, different lieux-dits, climat, premier cru. Some wine can be made only white, some can be made only red, sometimes 2. If you grow some other grapes, you lose the appellation, so it's a bit complicated. And I always like to say that when people come to Burgundy for the first time and go to Beaune, and of course, with the internet now they can go in a restaurant who is known for a good wine list. But if you don't know anything about Burgundy and you go to Cave du Colombier, where you have been, I'm sure, or Soufflot, there is a huge wine list. And if you don't know anything, you've got the same appellation with the same premier cru, same vintages, and maybe 10 different examples of that, and different price. So you know, it's not easy to start.
Okay, do you believe social media and YouTube have had a positive impact on the wine industry?
Like we are doing today, the way to educate people, to try to be more clear with what we try to do and the message we try to give, for sure. Because I export 80% of my production. Not all final consumer can come in my cellar and to listen what I have to say. And this is a perfect day to try to explain, not to convince, but to make it more clear and make people understand where we want to go and why, and with the history. And each generation has got this message to give. And for sure, these types of talk helps a lot to clarify the clouds.
Do you think scoring systems such as Parker Point still hold importance today?
I think it's still important. I don't want to say it's less important, but like for example, at the time of Parker, specialized for sure on Bordeaux. It was important for them, especially when you do limited cuvée, but cuvée made in big production. In Burgundy, you know, like we do 25 different wines. So I think the critics judge more the global domain. To say, okay, Alex Moreau or this guy is doing the wine in this direction. Scores, okay, this is a final hand. But I like the little resume you can read from a domain to try to teach where they want to go and what the decision they did in the few vintages. And in Burgundy now, you've got multiple critics. You can have different point of view. Again, as I said before, because Burgundy is complicated, when you've got people like Jasper, Maurice, he lives in Burgundy, you know, it's good to have people who can explain what is Burgundy, what was a global view of a vintage. After, on the score, I've got a lot of clients who say they don't care about much the score. They care about the story, about the score, and it's still, at the end, it's still private, individual taste.
What is the ideal serving temperature to best enjoy your wine?
You mean whites?
Whites, and red also.
Whites, not too cold.
Not too cold.
Not too cold. I would say for white, 12 to 13. I like to say cellar temperature.
Cellar temperature.
Cellar temperature is fine, but technically, I know it's not easy because if you want to eat in the cellar, at one point you're freezing. So I know it's not the same work in winter or in summertime. Summertime is becoming it's even more difficult because you don't want to chill your bottle, but at one point you have to keep it. So, okay, in ice, but maybe sometimes more cold water, and not too cold. But yes, for white, 12 to 13. And I try to convince, but I know sometimes it's not easy to do it during for the sommelier for the service. If they can carafe. Okay. And I'm talking whites because people has got the image about carafe, the red. No, whites. Yeah. Because with my way to make the wine, I don't expose my wine too much with air. So at one point it has to breathe, and I try to convince to use maximum of the decanting.
Wow. Is decanting truly necessary? In what situation would you recommend it?
Well, especially if it's like a last-minute opening, yeah, for sure, you do it. Yes. It happens many times when you go to restaurants. The best glass of the bottle is the last glass because it gives air. For young wines, as much as you can. For wine with a little bit of age, I will say just before pouring.
I'm crying.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Sassagno, right?
Yeah, Chassagne village.
Pronunciation is correct.
Chassagne.
Sassagno.
Chassagne.
Chassagne.
Chassagne, correct.
Sassagno.
No.
Très bon. Really.
Merci.
Yeah. I really loved your 22 vintage, also 23. Oh, I love it.
And even on the Chassagne village, I did long aging.
Oh, yeah, right. You don't drink too much, right?
I have to speak.
I have to speak.
But be careful. When I speak a lot, I'm thirsty after. So.
Okay. Yeah, yesterday we testing Moreau 2005 and Peter Châtillon 12.
We taste in a big glass.
Okay, because what is the most important principle in food pairing?
It's a good point. Each dish has got its own personality. I want to say a little bit like the wine, the Korean cuisine we had together. I can see there is some spice, but it's not over spice. But you need a wine with structure. Wine pairing, you need to find the idea of each side. I mean, the dish and the wine go in the same direction. And when everything is going together, both goes in a positive way. Like, I have to be honest, my wine, for example, with like oysters, like this, I have to say it's not the perfect wine pairing. For oysters, you've got this salinity, you need something more sharp, and certainly I will prefer wine with no aging in wood. I like this sharp lean. My wine will go more with food, with structure and power. And of course, after more you go in the aging vintages, you need stronger food.
Cheese.
Yeah, for example, cheese. Yes, a lot of the classic pairing about cheese and red. Yes, but personally, we drink much more white wine with a cheese.
Comté.
Yeah, for example, or even other cheese. But I think one of the biggest mistakes for me, and when people want to drink different bottle, and they pour their best bottle on the cheese. For me, it's a mistake.
Okay.
So your best bottle of red needs to be on the main course, and on the cheese you need, because it's strong, especially French cheese. You know, you need to refresh again this name, this word, your palate. So white wine is here for that.
Okay, we're gonna try next wine, Corton Charlie. I really love 2020 vintage for your wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last vintage under Bernard Moreau.
Yeah.
But for, if you see on the bottom of the label, it was vinifié par Alex Moreau. Yeah.
Do you remember last March, the La Folie?
Yeah.
I bring to this one.
Yeah. Correct. 20. Again, one of the earliest harvests I've ever done. But when you taste the wine, you don't feel warm vintage. You don't feel the heat. You don't feel the alcohol. But again, I'm happy. But during harvest, it was quite stressful because the maturity was going fast.
I'm straight. I love you. I really like your wine.
약간 알렉스님 러셀 크로우 닮지 않았어?
Oh, it looks like Russell Crowe.
Can you say more to my wife? I look like Russell Crowe.
Yeah. At this time, you are better. He's getting.
He's getting. I'm afraid. I'm afraid because he's getting like that. So I have to keep it under control.
Oh, Bata.
Yeah, Bâtard 23. So this one, we are February 26. We did the bottling in July 25. So yes, 22 months of aging.
Finally, is there anything you would like to say to those who are new to wine or to wine lovers in Korea?
I like to say that don't be afraid with if you are just a beginner in the wine. Just trust your palate. And this is very important because sometimes when you've got a wine event, of course, you've got some people with big knowledge. I can understand that people can be afraid to say, okay, I don't have this knowledge, I don't want to join, or I don't speak because I don't know nothing. The answer is your pleasure, your personal taste. For example, now, if you prefer the Bâtard and I prefer the Corton, nobody's right, nobody's wrong. It's just a personal taste. And it's what I like when people come in my cellar and we taste the 6 different Premier Cru. And suddenly in the tasting, people say, oh, I prefer this one, I prefer this. I like that because it means the wine are different and each perception is different. And I never try to convince you have to be a good winemaker, you have to follow my philosophy because my philosophy is mine, maybe my neighbor's is different. And it's a long way for the wine consumption. There is wine region much easier to like or to understand, and when people are curious, they can discover some other grapes, some other aspect of the winemaking. And sometimes, okay, I like this, I don't like that. It doesn't mean it's not good, it's less my taste, that's it.
I prefer Bata. Do you prefer Bata or Chevalier? Chevalier versus Bata.
I would say Bâtard for lunch and Chevalier for dinner. Bâtard is known to produce wine with muscle, with texture, you know. It's a kind of terroir where you can have depth without heaviness. Especially this parcel of Bâtard which is located upper side of Bâtard, just below the Grand Cru Moreau, where you get this finesse. Of course, Chevalier is very elegant, very it's opposite in style. So after, again, it's a question of personal taste.
Okay, see. Thank you for coming to Korea, and could you salute to Korean wine fans?
Thank you. Thank you for listening me, and I hope I try to clarify the wine consumption. You know, as a winemaker, I like to say this: the goal for a winemaker is to make the wine you want to make, and not make the wine you have to make to sell it. When you can choose where and keep your direction, and if you find the market for that, this is the best. As a wine consumer, follow your taste, and enjoy.
제가 굉장히 좋아하는 형님을 오늘 모시고, 제가 사실은 진짜 뭐 설산에서 제일 좋아하는 생산자 중에 한 명인데 한국을 처음 방문을 하셨어요. 그래서 지금 이틀째 모시고 있는데 굉장히 음식에 대한 부분도 많이 생각이 열려 계시고, 한국에 좀 더 이제 배정 수량을 늘려달라고 했으니 열심히 작업해서 며칠 동안 한국에서도 렉소 모로의 와인들을 많이 만날 수 있게 노력을 해보도록 하겠습니다. 지금까지 와인마시는아톰 이준혁이었습니다. 감사합니다.